Okay, everyone. Welcome to Welcoming the Neighbors Week. That's what we call it, with everybody, all the new people we've invited into the Caribbean, not into the room.
Oh, I was like, what?
Into the Caribbean, and now your readings, you're starting to learn about what people actually do in the Caribbean. So, it wasn't a holiday getaway in the 1700s. It was. So we're finding out what it is exactly that they do. What was the draw to the Caribbean?
Resources.
Gold. Was it gold?
Not really.
Not really.
Well, at the beginning, yeah.
Well, okay, yeah. But did they find any?
Not as much as they wanted.
No.
But they found other resources.
Okay, so what were the other resources? Y'all switched seats on me.
Yeah.
Testing me. Okay. So what was
They did sugar and the grain that starts with a C. That was what is it? The one that's poisonous that you have
It's
to.
not a grain.
Or it's not a grain.
Cassava.
Mm-hmm. Cassava. Cassava. It's not a grain, it's a root. It's like a
It's like a
potato.
potato.
Yeah, and I don't really like that.
Well, first they
They
started
strain
with-
it, and then they have to strain it, and then have to shape it.
Yeah. And where does, okay, so.
First they started with tobacco.
Right. Yeah. So what's the first crop that the first crop, because they do export the gold, but what's the first agricultural crop that they export? You're on. Tobacco, yes, tobacco. Okay, so tobacco is the first thing, and they realize that it grows really well. I'm surprised because it's from there, right? And also find profitability. We went through all the things that made it profitable. They made it profitable, right? Because it was just a plant before. Okay, so we've got tobacco. That works in some places. What other agricultural crops do we have? So tobacco is an indigenous crop, and they export it. What else? Well, let's start with the cassava, right? Okay, so cassava. Cassava, is that an indigenous crop?
Yes.
Okay. And you're saying they export it?
They used
They
it.
didn't really know what to do with it.
They don't do with tobacco either.
Yeah.
Well, they figure out that it is way hardier and better in the climate than they try wheat, they fail, they
Well,
try
they-
everything.
They put it on the ships.
Yes.
Yeah,
They
it's
learned
hard
to
tack.
use-
Sort of.
They learned how to like smoke tobacco from the Ottomans, right? Because they
No, they learned from the Arawak. That's what the Arawak
right,
did with
right.
it. But they learned how to make it a profitable
yeah.
business from the Ottomans. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the cassava, how does that become profitable? One, it starts off as a replacement crop for wheat, right? Because the wheat just doesn't work. So that's one of the replacement crops that they use. But that's not a profitable, in the way that you guys are thinking, that's not really profitable. So how do they make it profitable? You're on the right track when you said they put it on ships. What kind of ships?
Oh, slave ships. Oh, they feed the slaves.
Yeah. It becomes slave food, right. You go to West Africa, they would swear that cassava is a West African indigenous plant. It's not. It was made because it's so easy to grow, and it grows in the same type of climate. The Caribbean and the area of West Africa where the slaves are coming from is the same kind of climate zone. Grew perfectly. It's an easy crop to produce.
High source of energy.
High source of energy. So it's a carbohydrate as well. So there we go. We've got instant food for cheap food or merchandise that you're going to bring back. Okay. So that's how that becomes profitable. So we got two profitable agricultural things. What else do we have coming out of the Caribbean? Sugar. Okay. We'll go to that in a minute. So sugar. What is sugar indigenous to the Caribbean? No. Where does that come from?
Isn't that Asian?
That is the Caribbean.
Isn't that Asian?
Mesopotamia.
The East Indies. It comes from the East Indies. Yes. Yeah. Go all the way around. So yes, it comes from India and Indonesia, that area. It was a small crop. I mean, it wasn't something that people used a lot of. It was one of those riches from the East, right? So if you had sugar in the Middle Ages in Europe, you were pretty darn wealthy, because to get sugar all the way from India to you cost a whole lot of money. There wasn't the large production of it, all of that. When does that change, you guys? Remember there was some, yeah.
Well, when slaves started becoming, like when they were able to create the plantation systems, the massive plantations, and have such a large source of labor, of like, not necessarily skilled labor, but just like hard labor. So.
Did it have anything to do with like them discovering the Strait of Gibraltar, or the Strait of instead of going all the way around?
Magellan, yeah.
Yeah.
Gibraltar's
They
usually
probably
in
already
North
knew
Africa
that.
and Spain.
Okay.
Yeah. Not really. The rise of sugar in the West Indies, it makes a couple leaps. So there are a couple stepping stones before it gets to the Caribbean. You guys remember, I told you in a couple lectures, and then you read briefly about it too.
Crusades.
Hmm?
Well, when they took over Jerusalem, they were growing sugar around in the Middle East there, so they took over production pretty much.
So you have the Christians taking over production in the Mesopotamian area. That's one, and then that's the first stepping stone. What's the next leapfrog?
Oh, is it the Madeiras? Is that it? Good.
Good. Okay. So let's draw a really bad map on the. So okay, we're starting east-west. Right, Caleb was like, which way? So this is the east, okay, and this is the west. And okay, so over here we've got India and I don't know, the red.
Pakistan?
Yeah, Syria, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Here's the one side of Africa, right? So we got that. It's actually pretty good.
Yeah, you guys know what that is.
We're nowhere near Italy.
Okay, so there we've got Europe, okay? I didn't make that very close, but this is actually really close.
What she's drawing right now is Spain.
Yeah, this map is right. You got it right.
Yeah, see, I got it.
All right,
That's
okay, all right. Okay, so we've got the, it starts over here, right? The sugar starts over here, the little islands off the coast, right? And it travels, this is the Middle East. So we've got all the Middle East stuff here. And then the Europeans are coming this way, right? And so they meet it kind of in the middle there. What is the next leapfrog? So, we said the Madeiras. Madeiras are over here. Madeiras, the Canaries, the Azores, right? All of this stuff. So we've got these islands. So who brings it here? The Portuguese. So these guys, right? They bring it from actually through the Mediterranean down to here, right? Okay. So they start with the production here. Remember, they just like the Spanish did in the New World, the Portuguese have been doing that on these islands off the coast here. There were indigenous folks on these islands. The Portuguese and the Spanish at the Canaries came in and wiped them out. Oh my gosh, we have nobody to work the land. So where do you get it directly from here, right? So they bring the labor out here to work the plantations here. So this is the first time that you have this really large scale production of a food crop for not necessarily a sustenance purpose, right? Okay. We've had large scale farming before, but it was for a sustenance crop, right? A crop that you need to survive. We don't need sugar to survive, much as you might think you do. You actually really don't need sugar to survive, right? So this is this is a whole new thing. It's a profit built on profit, right? I mean, it's like you're building up something that didn't exist before. So that all comes to here. Then what's our next leapfrog? Right, then we go. Robelio. Right? So then our next leapfrog comes over this way.
Does it go to the lower? Does it go to the lesser ones first, or?
No, actually, the first place it goes is Hispaniola, which is just really bad. Let me draw Hispaniola better. There we go. So the first place it goes is from the Canaries here. And then it jumps over here, and actually from there it jumps down to the Dutch down here. Then it goes out to here. And then it goes all over. So it's a little bit of a circuit that it does. So this is all the Portuguese, right? This is the Spanish. Bring it here. Then we have the Dutch. And this is the English. Okay? So these are our leapfrogs. Goes to Hispaniola. This is the first major, and then from there to the rest of the Spanish Empire. Then the Dutch also use it. And remember, they've been robbing ships and stealing ships and that kind of thing. They're also stealing intel. And so what's now Suriname, it was called the Guyanas. That whole Suriname, east and either side, the Guyanas on either side was actually Dutch. And so this area produces sugar.
That whole area was Dutch at the time? Oh, didn't know.
Yep. Well, at certain times.
Okay.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of other people that are getting the game too. It's Spanish at one point.
We talk
It's
about that.
Portuguese.
Jews, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so here, then the Dutch, the English and the Dutch are both on Barbados. The Dutch they're growing tobacco mostly when the English first get there. The Dutch show them a more profitable crop because actually the tobacco didn't work as well down here. It was a little too humid in Barbados. So they were like, we've got a crop that'll actually work better. This is obviously not to scale because this is actually on the meridian line right there. But so they're like, we have something that works even better. And so they show them sugar, and then the English take that, kick the Dutch off, and it becomes one of the biggest sugar producing islands until Jamaica takes over. Okay? So it explodes from there. So sugar is our biggie crop. All right, does that make any sense at all? Yes, okay. Okay. So they're making a market for this. So we got sugar, cassava, tobacco. What else?
We started to see that they talk about ginger as a
Ginger, definitely. Now that's it's a spice, right? Is it indigenous to the W or to the E side?
E.
This is when I wish I had one of those polling things.
Wait,
Pull out your
Yeah.
clickers.
The clicker thing. All right, hands up for who thinks it came from the West.
Wow.
I heard people say you aren't going to own it.
And then I got convinced.
Oh, okay. So the East. Okay. Ginger is a flower, actually. It looks like a looks like I don't know. It looks like a flower. And yes, it does come from the East. So let's see. I'll show you a picture of ginger.
That's a pretty good Florida. I'll give you that.
Thank you.
I've seen a lot worse.
Okay, here we go. Oh, I need to turn the thingy on. Pictures, pictures. There we go. So that's what the ginger flower looks like, and that's the,
Is it the root that we eat?
yes, you eat the root of it.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
I've never been a fan of ginger.
Ginger comes from the East Indies. It's one of those plants. That's the whole reason. One of the reasons people were going over to the east was this dried and ground and that kind of thing. It was a digestive. It was all kinds of. You could do all kinds of. Apothecaries loved ginger. It was one of
Gingerbread
the-
cookies.
Yeah. Well, that's a later thing. It's also very calming and soothing. But that was one of the things that comes from the east, and it has a very specific zone that it grows in, which of course our meridians come across, and you find that zone also. So the tropical zone works well with this. It never takes on the prominence of sugar or tobacco, but it's important. Now you don't have to go all the way over to the east and go, around stuff. If you're in Europe, all you do is this little trade right here in your little bathtub. So you don't have to leapfrog over things. It cuts down the price of production, right? So you can make more money, you have more profit. You don't have as much putting into shipment and storage and all that kind of stuff. You can get it to market much easier, much cheaper. So yes, okay, so let's start writing down the things that we've got that are affected by this. So we had tobacco, sugar, cassava, anything else?
Pumpkins?
Pumpkins. You just love those pumpkins. Okay. Pumpkins, I'm going to put actually squash because it's a squash, right? Which of our sizes is that, W or an E? Hands up for W. Hands up for E. It is actually a W. It's a W. Squashes are, there are some kinds of gourds that you do find in Africa and Asia, but most of them come from being brought over from so they date from 1490, whatever. So this is interesting, right? We're seeing things that are part of the culture in Africa, part of the culture in some of the Pacific islands of these, of gourds being used for music, gourds being used for decoration, for pottery, but it's from this side. So you date it, that culture, that cultural attribute from a different time period, right? It's like, I don't know, like putting the Confederate flag on your state flag, right? I mean, that dates from 1950. But people are like, oh, we've always done that. No, you haven't always done that, right? So your culture, the things that you think are part of the culture that have become just so ingrained in culture, not so much. And that one of those things is the gourd or the pumpkin kind of thing.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you.
And the cassava also.
So how did it get linked to Halloween?
That's a good question. It's because of the fall holiday and the ancient Gallics, and they used other ground vegetables like beets and things like that, and they would carve those out, put a light in it.
And they thought, bigger, better.
It's actually
Halloween.
dates, yeah, it actually dates from, if I have my cultural history right, I think the idea of putting that light and using a pumpkin is one from North America. So the Irish and the Scottish, when they get to North America, start using the pumpkin. And two, it's late. I mean, it's like the Victorian era, so the mid to late 1800s is when you start seeing pumpkins as the symbol of Halloween kind of thing.
She's right.
Yeah, that got that right. So yeah, so they used to use other things, but that's all you think of is pumpkins. Okay, what else?
Wasn't there like cotton?
Good. I should put gold up there. We talked about that first, so I'll put gold up at the top. Okay. Cotton. Okay. So, which side of the world is cotton from? W or E?
W. Wait.
Ken?
No.
I don't
Wait.
think.
India.
No.
Okay.
No.
Without looking it up.
E.
Okay, hands up for E. Hands up for W. See, y'all changed your minds since somebody looked it up.
Because they used to make all their clothes out of cotton, but then when they got
I got that now.
when they started making their clothes out of silk, or at least nobles did. Is that right?
Sort of. They would use flax and all
Yeah.
kinds of things. But yes, cotton grew on both sides. The little string, I'm blanking on what it was called, the little belt that married women wore, nagua, the nagua that the Arawak women wore was made out of cotton. So they had cotton here. It was just a different type, a different variety of cotton. And they definitely had cotton in Europe. They had cotton in Asia. They had cotton in Africa. Everybody had a type of cotton that they could use. So cotton is worldwide, but it becomes a thing. Why does it rise in prominence? Why do people suddenly need more cotton?
Population growth?
Yes.
I mean, that's for anything though.
Yeah.
Is it cotton? Is it because you can process it faster?
Yes. So now you can process cotton faster, so you need more. What is the reason? There's a historical reason for why you can process things faster and you need more. Well, yeah, but why did they invent the cotton gin? No, you just.
So they militarizing? They needed more uniforms?
I'm just gonna guess, like clothing wise, or like fabric and stuff, I don't know.
That's a part of it. Why can you now produce more clothing using this more?
Oh, because it's harder over there, right? No?
You're talking about the industrial model?
The Industrial Revolution.
Oh, right.
Oh.
Because of the Industrial Revolution, now you can process more cotton faster. You guys are good. You were gonna get there.
He got there earlier, he just didn't say it loud enough.
We were just swinging and missing on that.
Yeah.
No one expects the Industrial Revolution.
There you go.
Revolution. It is a revolution. It completely changes the way things are. It's 180 from the way things were before, and you need more product. So the rise of cotton's importance is fed by the Industrial Revolution. So they didn't have enough to fill the factories. Once you have that product to fill the factories, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You need more stuff, you make more stuff, you can make more. So it just kind of keeps building. Okay. Anything else? Bless you.
Sorry, indigo.
Yes, I was hoping somebody would say that. That's one of my favorite things. Oh, and I didn't bring my indigo.
Wait, is this just anything they got out of it or brought in, or? Just
Both.
anything?
It's
Okay.
why would you think this was at all profitable? What could you make money doing? Growing. So, indigo. You guys know what indigo looks like?
It's a
Yeah.
flower, right?
Yeah.
It is.
Like the way.
So So that's what it looks like.
It's so tiny.
It is a little flower. And this is what you do with it. Let's see if she shows us what you do with it.
What language is that?
That's like a Slavic language. That's Dutch.
Okay.
So that's what the plant looks like. If you were growing it, you'd have a whole bunch of this.
Next video, Jonathan finds it and kills it.
Let's see. There's got to be something that shows how you can make indigo out of it. There we go. Process from plant to seed. So, here they are growing indigo. Cutting it up, soaking it, and see, as you soak it, the color comes out.
And the rocks that are like add.
To add weight
Yeah,
to, so
okay.
they don't float to the surface.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you drain it, and so you take the vegetation out, and you have the colored water there. And then you add something to it to make it a paste, and you keep adding stuff, and you keep adding stuff. You do that, and then you have the indigo. Now it's a paste, and that's
Nice.
indigo.
So is it
So.
the plant or the flower that makes
It's the flower. The flower that, well, actually no, they were showing the whole, you put the whole thing in, so the leaf probably also has, because it's kind of actually a greenish blue, and it's adding the lime to it, and the whatever chemical process that happens with that makes this pretty blue color. The other thing that that you can do with this, indigo dog. The other thing you can do with indigo is whiten. It's like totally against what you think would happen, but I'll bring in on Wednesday, I'll bring in what's called bluing. And it was a thing that people used before Clorox bleach. So before bleach was something, you still had whites that would get dingy and yellow, and so you wanted to brighten it, you use indigo. A different process, instead of making it making it blue to dye, you make it blue and it takes the color out. So if you have like a yellow, you know how white kind of gets that yellowy tinge to it? This neutralizes that yellow. So it's totally counterintuitive, but you put a little bluing in your whites and you get super white. I mean, my grandmother used to use it, and when my uncle died, I found a bottle of bluing. I was like, that's weird. I didn't know it was still, you can't find it in the store anymore, but it tells you exactly how to do it. The liquid is blue, and it's just like counterintuitive of how you put that in with your whites. Like, that sounds really scary. But my grandmother had little blue tabs. They would look like a little piece of incense. You know those triangle incense things. And it looked just like that. And she'd drop it in with her whites, and it would turn white. So it's pretty cool. So that was the other use for indigo. And that was grown mostly, some of the islands did for a while, mostly the southern islands, and the Dutch had really large indigo plantations in Suriname in this area. So there's not that many. There's some in South Carolina, and on the Sea Islands in Georgia grew indigo as well. It's a very specialized plant, so the market is small too. So that wasn't a huge seller, but you can make money off it. What else?
bad to say slaves?
No, that's a crop.
Yeah.
A crop, yeah.
And export and import.
Yeah.
I feel like it would have been brought up sooner or later.
It needs
like
to
we
be brought
mentioned
up.
it a bunch.
It
but-
needs to be brought up. Who is processing all of this stuff? So, I mean, I keep saying the Dutch and the English but they're just the importers and exporters of the product. The product that is making the product is the slaves. And that's how slaves are thought of, as merchandise, right? So you purchase your labor and you put your labor to work. And your labor produces other products that make money. Because your slaves actually don't make money, right? That
Okay.
product itself does not make money. No. They grow the money, literally grow the money.
So they like in Africa, did they just like capture people, or did they like also like breed existing slaves to like?
No, that doesn't happen until the importation of slaves is prohibited. So in the United
Importation
States,
is prohibited where?
So for instance, in the United States, it was slave labor was something you bought and brought over, right?
Mhm.
You imported that labor. When the slave trade is ended in 1808, then you can't bring that labor in legally. You can't bring that labor in.
So you need a breed.
So somehow you've got, if you don't want to end the industry of slavery, you've got to figure out a way of reproducing slaves. So that's when the breeding process starts. Otherwise, it's not necessary. Brazil never gets into the raising of their own slaves. Until the bitter end, they are importing slaves.
Would it have been easier to do it with like actually breeding, because then they wouldn't know much different, like as messed
Well,
up as that
that's
is.
been one of the arguments.
Yeah, that's what they say. That's like the Creole, like the Creole slaves versus
The ones you bring
imported.
in
Yeah.
are supposed to be more docile because it's all they've ever known,
Yeah.
right? So it's that whole, that idea we're talking about culture, right? So if that's all you've ever known, then it doesn't seem odd. If it's something you're forced into, then it's something that you're constantly going to resist. Doesn't mean that Creole slaves or slaves who are born into slavery aren't going to resist as well. But you get more resistance out of people who have been free and now are not.
But not all Creoles were slaves, right? There was a part of the.
Creole just means born in the Americas.
Right.
Not all Creoles were black either. So if you were born in the Americas, you're Creole. It's a Spanish term or a French term. Is that a question, Celine, or? No, processing. Yeah, so that is actually slaves are our most lucrative trade product,
Is it Creole,
but
huh?
they are not the product that makes the most, you don't make money off of. I mean, they actually don't make money. Until you get to the breeding, right? Until you actually are breeding them, and then they actually do make money. But there are only a couple places in our hemisphere that do that.
Well, did they like incentivize breeding with money or something?
No, because now you're actually growing the product.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, so you're doing the same thing as you're doing.
I thought you meant they were getting paid.
Oh, no. The slaves aren't making money off of this.
I
The
thought-
slave owners are making
Yeah.
money off of this. Now it's a way that you can, they kind of chill a little bit with not being able to import, because they're like, oh, actually, now I can make money off of this product, right? Families meant nothing, right? A woman has a child, that child is then the property of the owner, and the owner can then sell. It's a freebie, right? So you have a product for free, which you can sell at market value. Which is why US slave owners didn't understand why other countries, Cuba and Brazil didn't get on that.
Way ahead of time.
Yeah, they were like, we can make money off this, It's like you're spending money constantly trying to get people to work, whereas we're just growing them homegrown. We've got homegrown labor here. So that was the big argument with it. And the others would argue, well, it's actually, it was a business decision whether you wanted to, which way you wanted to do it, whether you wanted to grab your labor from somewhere else and keep replenishing, or whether you self-replenished. Those are two different business models. They argued profusely in the trade journals. Which one was better? There's another one that you could add with the sugar. It goes with sugar.
What'd you say? Coffee?
Coffee.
Coffee.
Didn't like all three of those like kind of come together at one point? Because then they had like coffee houses that they would also turn into like smoke houses and stuff.
Coffee houses. Well, they start off as tobacco houses, and then you need something to do while you're smoking your tobacco. So they started like they were in pubs, right? And then they were like, oh, coffee. The elite brought the coffee in, so you guys smoke and drink in your pub, and Will goes to the coffee houses. And then everybody else gets on the coffee bandwagon. There's another thing that they had also.
Don't you want sugar in the coffee?
Yeah, you wanted the sugar in
Okay.
the coffee. So with the sugar and coffee, that goes, but there's something else that goes with sugar
Is
too.
it cattle?
No, but that's something we should put up here.
I was thinking that was like milk.
Was it tea?
There's not much tea grown in the Americas in this era. But there is something that is from this hemisphere that goes really well with sugar. Not so much with tobacco, but it goes, they open houses for this product. And it only tastes good with sugar. The only reason that it's a good product is because of sugar.
Oh.
Oh, because the cocoa itself it was bitter.
It's nasty. I know. It's so bad. I should bring you guys in some raw cacao. It's really, really a treat. Let's see.
Is it rum or whiskey? Or was it rum? Is that a big trading?
It becomes, that is actually, let me finish with this and then we'll go to the
Okay.
rum. So, because that's a good one too. Cacao plant. Skip. Go. Okay. Dude, alright. So ignore weird, creepy guy in the front. New Zealander or whatever.
He's just chilling.
Okay, that's what it looks like.
So big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It doesn't smell like chocolate either, so it smells earthy.
Plant.
Okay, so there you go. Then you harvest it. And inside, look what it looks like inside.
It's like white and furry, isn't it?
Yeah, well,
Wow.
pulpy, yeah.
Oh, it wasn't one of those expensive.
I was just like a bean, pretty coffee bean.
Yeah, well, they are beans. Look, see over there? So it comes out, there's a bunch of tropical plants that look kind of like that.
That's actually really cool.
Whoa.
They used these on Star Trek one time, and you know, they had like,
I was about to say, it kind of looks like an insect, like
well, they actually use it as one of the weird, starry fruit, fruits from
Oh.
a strange planet.
That's funny.
They use the inside of it. Okay, so there you go. So then that's what makes the chocolate. It still doesn't smell. It smells slimy and earthy. Okay, so you do all that. Then he just likes hitting things.
It seems kind of fun. Goes with the doing
Then this is it's been sitting out in the sun,
So
so
they
you
dry
dry
it?
it. Yes,
That looks good. That looks like chocolate. Sort of.
it's starting to look more like it's supposed to look. Yeah. So it's still it still hasn't gotten to the point yet that It should. Okay, so now it's been totally dried. So now you've got these little crumbly things. And that is what, then you grind it, rough grind. And it feels like wood shavings. It's the texture of it is kind of like sawdust is what it feels like. And it still doesn't really smell like chocolate. It smells a little bit better, but it still doesn't smell like it's supposed to be chocolate. Then you grind it up a little bit more, and you get that. Put a little water in there. You okay?
Yeah, just.
Put a little water in there, and it becomes that. And that's what you add sugar to. And because this is really bitter. This is up to this point. Up to the point of the grinding of it is exactly what the Aztecs did. And it's from this point that is what the Europeans kind of changed. Because they realized that this is not going to sell, right? People are not going to buy that. That is just not at all good. Because the Aztecs would steep that like you do tea. They would steep it, and they put some cinnamon in with it.
Be like coffee.
Didn't the Aztecs also make beer out of it?
Yep, you can ferment it, and you can make beer out of it. Yeah, you can do anything you can with any plant, you can do with the chocolate. But this is a sacred drink for the Aztecs. So only the upper strata of the Aztecs would drink the cacao milk, or not milk, but liquid, it was strained like a tea. So it's the Europeans who I don't know if it's accidentally or on purpose, mixed it with the sugar, because the Aztecs had the cinnamon that they would put in it, and there were other spices that they would put in it. Chili is another thing that the Aztecs used with it. So they had their own spices, and I'm sure the Europeans are like, that's really nice, but let's try this. And they put some sugar in it, and the more sugar you put in it, the better it is, right? Then it was a Belgian who discovered that if you put milk with it, it's even better. So, and that was later when they figured that out, but it was kind of this, to make the bars. I mean, they put milk in with the sugar and the water for hot cocoa, but they had to make bars out of it. So it was a Belgian that figured that out. Now Belgian chocolate, Swiss chocolate, that's the best stuff. Okay, so the cocoa. Then there was something else we were going to say. Cattle. Rum, yes. Okay. So the rum is the only product that the home governments, the mother country, would allow to be processed in the colonies. Everything else, to get to the final chocolate, you could send this over. You could get it to that point, and then you had to send it back to the Netherlands.
And that's universal among all the colonies?
All the colonies did that.
Okay.
Okay, remember we're talking about the Industrial Revolution, right? So industry is, and even before that time in the 1600s, you're talking about a colony. A colony produces the raw product. The mother country gives you the finished product. So the job of the colony is to give you the raw product. If it goes past that, it's not raw anymore. So you would send this. This is shippable too. I mean, you don't want to send the cacao itself would rot, right? So you don't want to send that over. So you process it to that point. Nobody wants that point, right? So in order to make it yummy, then you have to send it to the mother country. Okay? So with cotton, you would send the raw cotton, the seeds taken out of it, but not made into thread, not made into cloth, none of that. You send the puffs over, so bags and bags of the puffs of cotton. And you send that to the factory, either up north or to the, to whatever, England or wherever. And there it's made into thread and fabric. And then it's sent back to the Americas. Sugar you could only produce to basically that point. So it's molasses. It's the blackstrap, the really non-sweet stuff that you're like, this came from sugar because it's really not sweet. And brown sugar. So that's as far as you could get the sugar. Then you had to ship it back to the mother country. And that's where you get the refined white sugar. So they would refine it in Europe. The only thing that you could actually have the finished product, part of that getting it to the brown sugar stage is that brown sugar can turn into rum, right? So you can ferment that. The fermentation of that could take place in the Caribbean. And in fact, the British Navy switched from beer to rum as the drink for sale. You didn't drink water, because the water doesn't last for that long, and the other water that you have is really salty. So what they used for liquid for the people on the ship was beer first, and then it became cheaper to when they stopped in the Caribbean or in the East Indies to restock with rum that was produced in those places.
Did they carry water at all?
They did, but water, have you ever left a bottle of water on your desk and then come back to like a couple weeks later and you're like, there's something wrong with it, and you pour it out, right? Because it tastes stale and there's probably a couple bugs floating in it, and so that's what would have it. They had casks, barrels of water, and it was precious. And the cook, and the only two people who had access to it were the ship's captain and the cook. And the cook knew how much water was in there, and you would like dug under the surface of it because there's a whole bunch of stuff on top, and you pull it up, and that way. It would get stale. It's sitting in a wooden barrel for weeks.
Wouldn't it be moving enough on the ship though?
Oh.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, the motion, you think of that, but the motion is actually pretty constant. So when it's sloshing back and forth, it's not really disturbing stuff.
Just
But I mean,
bring it
like,
to the top.
I mean, like, drinking
just a
stale
sentence.
water,
It's a churn, yeah.
dehydration.
Well, water was not as ubiquitous as it is for us now. I mean, we think you can stop anywhere and get water, but people actually didn't drink as much water as we think they did.
Really?
They hydrated in different ways, and there are different things that you would drink, but water wasn't necessarily one of them. And especially if you're on a long journey, you need things that will actually keep. And alcohol is one of the things that keeps better.
So was the beer as strong as it is today? Because like they were just pounding beer like to hydrate.
No,
Wouldn't that just be
yeah,
like,
it was like, the proof of it would have probably been 3 or 4%. So it was really low proof. I mean, if you go to, I'm not endorsing this in any way, but if you like go on a beer crawl in Europe, just saying, you'll find like a whole wide variety of beers, of different strengths of beer. And the beer that you kind of actually just like drink every day is 3 and 4% alcohol. It's not that strong. It's really yummy, but it's not that strong. It's like the kind of the 8 and 9 and 10% specialty brews were things that you would like go to the pub and like have a cigar with and drink that. But like the everyday just quench your thirst was that. Another thing people drank was fruit ciders. So cider ferments too. And so that would be another thing that you would drink. But cider can also be a restorative, like apple cider vinegar, right? So there's actually a drink that they used to drink. Actually, my husband, when he worked on his grandparents' farm, they were German immigrants. And the drink that they had was apple cider vinegar with apple juice and lemon. So you put lemon juice, and she would put some honey in it too for the kids. And so you put some honey, some apple cider vinegar, some apple cider, and it was really quenching. And that was it's like lemonade, right? But it's actually the apple cider, the vinegar part of it that is the quencher, the thirst quencher. And he would be out there baling hay, all day, and they'd have, a jug of this apple cider vinegar drink that, people would take tins of. So that was, and she brought that from the old country, right? So that's one of the things that would do. And you can make that out of anything, blueberries or strawberries or cranberries or apples or, any of those harvesty.
I think I remember reading that like right before the revolution and stuff like that, hard apple cider had already surpassed beer and everything for that, because there was a tax on all the beer and everything being brought in. So they were all like, why don't we just
you could just go out in your backyard and you can make cider.
Yeah.
So that was, the thing that killed the cider industry was prohibition. It killed all the alcoholic industries, but cider was just something you grew just to work in the fields and those kind. It was the water, but it became illegal because it had alcohol in it, and so they killed. I mean, it's just now since prohibition is over in 36 or something like that, and so it's like just in the last 10 years that the cider industry is back.
There was one pro to the prohibition to give us NASCAR. So,
If that's a pro, then yes.
Is that what it is? That's the origin of it?
yeah, the bootleggers would soup up all those crazy automobiles, and they'd take out all like the seats and stuff, so they'd fill it with just moonshine, and so and then they'd run from the cops. And then after the prohibition, they had all these crazy cars. And they were like, you know what? Let's race them. So that's how NASCAR was born.
God bless America.
So because of the prohibition, my grandfather every Sunday sits on his couch and watches NASCAR for 4 hours. Every Sunday. Wow.
Gotta have a purpose in life.
Yes.
So that was the long answer to the wrong question.
Yes.
Why is called the rum gun? There you go.
Okay, so now we've populated the Americas and we have something for you to come here and do, right? So, goodness, you guys are all like dying in here.
Yeah.
Do they like coconuts? Do they use coconuts a lot?
Coconuts is an East thing. It comes from the Pacific Ocean, Pacific Islands.
Oh, so they're not native to America?
No, they're not.
Oh, that's a hard
Yeah.
Wow.
They are the coconut palms are non-native. They're from the Pacific Islands.
How about bananas?
Can't remember bananas. Bananas are, I want to say they're East Indian.
So I've definitely seen or heard of like banana farms in the area.
Oh yeah, no, bananas now is one of the largest crops. But my recollection, that's one that I always forget. But I think those are from the East Indies. I don't think the Aztecs ever had bananas.
So, did they have plantains are from Africa though, right?
Yes, and that's a different.
That's different,
A banana and a plantain are two different things. A banana is a fruit, and a plantain is a starch. So plantain goes with the cassava.
Said to be from East Asia.
So, all right. Okay. I love it when I'm right. Okay.
Killing it today.
So yes, but the plantains, that went with the cassava. It was a starch. It actually doesn't have that much nutritional value, but it fills you up, right? So you eat a bunch of plantain and you're like,
Loaded.
so it you stop with the I'm hungry thing. But cassava and plantains became slave food, both for the voyage and then once they got to the Americas.
As it says right here, Portuguese sailors brought bananas to Europe from West Africa in the early 15th century for slaves.
Mhm. Yep, that's what they were doing. That's actually a pretty good map. It's not to scale, but
It's okay. I understood where everything's going.
Oh, yeah.
Middle East is a little smushed, but
yeah,
besides
not so good with the Middle East.
This isn't
And
class.
no Saudi Arabia, but when we were talking about that.
We were talking about Saudi Arabia. I could put it in there.
That's all right.
Okay. So your readings for this week. I introduced some new people. I mean, we talked about the Dutch, we talked about the Portuguese, we talked about the Spanish, a little bit about the English. Who did I introduce?
Were you reading an
Oh.
Irish thing?
No, I didn't give you that book. It was a
Okay.
novel that I'm not having you guys read.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then the other one is History of the Caribbean. I'm not sure if we have that one.
I realized today that it wasn't linked, so I'll get that linked.
Okay.
I was saying, who did we talk
Yeah.
about? Who did
But
we
there
talk
was
about?
something that was linked that I
Yeah.
added.
Yeah, the Jews, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Jew, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so how did they fit into this whole story?
Well, the ones that were in Spain and Portugal, they converted Christianity to escape from the Inquisition. But they were still like closet Jews. So when they came over to the Caribbean, they were still like new Christians. But if Spain lost control of the territory, they would convert them to go back to Judaism because they didn't have to worry about Spain anymore.
Yeah. They were what was called conversos, converts. So they conversos. So they converted in name, right? And this is part of why there's an Inquisition, because the church in Spain was like, you say you converted, but did you really? So they would make sure that you really converted. And it's not just Spain. Wherever the Catholic Church was, the Inquisition was, I mean, Italy had really serious routes. But the reason why it's important for the Americas is technically you could only come to the Americas if you were certified Christian, certified Catholic.
And that's from
Spain.
Okay, Spain.
From Spain or Portugal. So you could only sign on to Columbus's ship to come on his trip if you were a certified Catholic. Remember though that that's just after they've taken over the entire peninsula, right? So we still have people who just a couple weeks ago were Muslim, and just a couple weeks ago were Jewish, and so all they really have to do is sign a little note that says, "Hi, I promise to be Catholic," and they can get on the ship. It becomes a little more stringent as we go through the centuries, as the Spanish are like, you've got to do more than just sign a thing. So
They kind of caught on.
they caught on to that. So it became a thing of, well, were your parents Catholic? No? Okay. Were your grandparents Catholic? No? Okay. So you're not. So it was, they went back, with the Inquisition, it got as far back as 4 generations. So if you couldn't prove that at least one person back to your great-grandparents was Catholic, then you were in trouble. You should not be in Spain. We're not allowed. Yes?
Did we talk about how part of Columbus's crew might have been Jewish and Muslim? Would that have been because he didn't care, or because they were conversos?
Well, because it was so soon after the Inquisition started. Torquemada doesn't sign the Inquisition papers until till April.
Oh, right.
And they leave in September, so there wasn't much time for him to get a role in
Yeah.
this thing, so. Yeah, so that's more why. They didn't know to
Yeah.
be as vigilant. Later expeditions are more vigilant. But still, there are small things. Did we talk about about Spanish cuisine? No, Spanish cuisine is part of the Inquisition. What, do you guys know what the Spanish, if you go to Spain, what should you ask for?
Or oh crap. Is
Yeah.
it the C one of the C? Something?
Paella.
Yeah.
Paella.
Carnitas.
Yeah, those two. But paella is a dish. I'll show you a picture of paella. It is the national dish. Oops, not what I wanted to do. It's the national dish. Close everything. We'll start again here.
So many different variants too. It's like, you can't just get sick of it.
Yeah, just show me some paella images. There we go. Paella.
Oh my gosh.
So good.
This is a good picture. Here.
Joking. That looks
Okay.
so good.
What does it have in it?
We got clams, we got shrimp, we got green beans or asparagus,
Sausage.
rice.
But what's the grain used?
It's rice.
Rice, okay.
Cheesy kind of.
Are those-
some kind
are
of
those
cheesy.
Butter is a lot of.
Oh, that looks so
Oh, wait,
good.
those clams or oysters?
Clams.
Either one. Either one. Yeah.
Kinda like, it just varies throughout restaurants that you go to.
Yeah. Every region has its own recipe for paella.
I'm so
But
hungry.
this is the national dish. Okay.
Allie, I should do paella.
Now,
Yeah, right.
the only thing that does not, I mean, the vegetables and stuff that you put in here changes. The thing about the base of the paella
That would kill
is
us.
it's cooked in meat broth,
Oh,
yeah.
that's
okay? It has crustaceans in it,
Yeah, that's good.
and it has chorizo in it, it has sausage in it. Sausage is what? Pork.
yeah.
Okay. If you're Muslim,
You don't get pork.
or if you're Jewish, you don't eat pork.
You're Jewish, you don't eat things that are mixed together.
Yeah,
You
you
don't
can't,
eat
yeah.
mixed, it has dairy in it
Yeah.
and meat.
Yeah, you can't.
So you can't, if you're Orthodox Jewish, you can't eat the dairy and the meat together in the same plate.
They don't want.
These things,
Yeah, they don't want you eating crustaceans.
you cannot eat crustaceans, neither Muslim or Jewish.
Yeah.
Can eat crustaceans.
So the Spanish basically just went, we're gonna take everything that they don't eat, and we're gonna make that what we eat.
Why?
Just to see
So
who's
that
real.
it's an
Identification. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's why, like,
Wow.
major holidays you have,
Yeah.
like, ham, right? Like, no, not ham,
that's-
it's something else.
Yeah, but that's, the reason that in Spain, ham, all types of ham are such a big thing is, again, it's an
Yeah.
Inquisition food, right? So if you come and you're gonna have just, afternoon snacks, somebody's gonna put out the Iberico, which is this, this really yummy ham. It's hunks of ham, right? And they'll put that out, but they'll put it on the same plate as the cheese. So even if you were gonna eat the meat, even if you're like, okay, I'll just suck it up and eat the meat, then you're in trouble because it's sitting on the same plate with the cheese. So then you're breaking two things.
That's devious.
Hmm?
That's what eat cheese either.
That's like.
They can't eat
devious
it if
as
it's
all
on the
hell.
same
Like,
plate
what's-
as the meat.
So that's what they were.
So that's why I mean-
actually building their
That's
own
crazy.
Well, no, they're sitting there like, if you don't eat, then we know it's not.
Right, yeah, I mean, you couldn't, if
Everybody's
you
gotta eat,
claim,
right?
my stomach, or I just ate enough times, people are like,
Yeah.
why are you not eating? Why do you never eat when you come over to my house,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So this was part of the Inquisition.
Wow.
So you go to any restaurant in Spain and you eat Spanish food.
That's genius, though.
You're eating, I mean, because it's this ham, it's dairy with meat, even if it's beef or, some chicken or something like that, it has dairy with it. So it's all of these ways of outing the Jews, especially the Jews, but also the Muslims.
Let me see if I can find it.
I have not found good paella in Burlington. There is one restaurant that makes it, and it's not very good.
What restaurant is that?
I'm not gonna say, because it's not very good.
Expose
It's not even
Expose
good. I'm not gonna expose you to bad paella.
Go to Spain.
Yeah, let's just take a class trip to Spain.
What's
We can
really
try
You can
it.
go to, there's a couple places in Boston actually that make some really good paella.
Wait, where in Boston?
Well, there's a whole area down by the Back Bay that makes really good paella. Also, Montreal is only an hour and a half away from you, and there are some awesome restaurants up there. So,
Just need to hop on that.
You don't have a
yeah,
passport.
so.
That's what I figured.
I
I think
don't
this
know.
one might not be half bad.
I don't know that one. That one looks new. Oh, it's in Canada. It's in
But
Quebec,
so I just
Montreal. So yeah, that one.
where,
That
how
one
you
would be
go
good.
4 years
This one's
before
the
you
only one.
return. I
Yeah.
had to wait.
I wanna look at this.
I
What?
waited like until
Yeah, go. You have to go to Montreal to get really good.
the 10 year.
Okay. So okay. So we brought the. So we
I know, I'm getting it.
sneakily got here as if you're Jewish, you got here and you kind of denied your heritage. And then somebody like Peter Kine comes in and takes over Curacao, and you're like, whoa, okay. The Dutch weren't as obnoxious with the religion thing. I mean, they had their Protestantism, and as long as you didn't, proselytize or whatever, they were cool with you. So we see the largest Jewish population in the Dutch islands, and you see a lot of people from the Spanish areas going there, because also what happened when they were kicked out of Spain, the Netherlands was one of the places that they went. So you have a huge Jewish population in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, and other places, and then they become some of the merchants that are working in the Caribbean, and they also move to the Caribbean because they see opportunities. So the Dutch is like a safe zone. Dutch places are a safe zone for the Jews. But you also find them in the English, because actually for the English, it wasn't a big deal either until much later, until like the 1700s or something, it becomes an issue. So you see in the early era, you see a lot of people fleeing from Iberia and going to England as well. So the Protestant countries become a safe zone for the Jews, right? And they don't go to Italy, they don't go to Portugal or Spain, but they will go to some of the Protestant countries. And from there, they'll come over here. So, yeah. Any questions about what you were reading or anything? Yeah.
I mean, so there's one thing that just made it, that kind of confused me a little bit, where there was the intolerance about the Spanish, and they weren't really for the Jews. But then they talked about in marriages outside the religion, it was expected that the Jewish parent would raise the children within Judaism, and that the Christian wife would convert. This idea was not always achieved. They lived together in areas like the Caribbean, Venezuela, and Colombia.
Okay, so what's happening is the religion, the Jewish religion, is carried through the mother. So it's a maternal religion. It's a maternal link of the religion. So if a Protestant or a Catholic marries a Jewish woman, she's the one who's going to pass on the religion anyway. So that's what Ezrati's talking about. The way it gets lost is when a Jewish man marries a non-Jewish woman.
That's when they have to.
That's when you need your community around you to teach the religion to the children, because it's not the man's duty, it's the woman's duty. Okay. So that's why the community was so important, because it wasn't endogamous. They were marrying outside of their religion mainly for population's sake. There just weren't that many Jews around. But what they tended to do was to live in a communal area so that if a man did marry outside of the religion, there were women in that community who could
Who would pick up and
pick
be
up
like, we're
and,
good.
yeah. Yeah, does that help?
Yep, that does.
Just look at how good that one looks.
You still have that, is that the Galacia?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good place, I've been there.
Shrimp, scallop, mussels, clams, squid, and pieces of lobster.
Yeah,
Oh.
can't eat squid if you're Jewish, sorry. If you are
Hasidic?
definitely not Hasidic, not conservative is the other one, but Orthodox.
What did, I actually have a question. On the ships, like what main source of protein did they have?
The fish.
Fish they caught.
They also had salted meat.
So they brought like dried,
They would
dried
bring,
turkey.
yes,
So
the
jerky.
way that you preserved meat before refrigeration was salt. And so everything you'd have this, and that's what the Spanish meat was. I mean, it was all this salted meat. That's what pastrami is, that's what the prosciutto, all those
Pepperoni.
things, pepperoni. It's all salted meats or spiced meats that that dry it out and make it so that it doesn't spoil. Or so you can't taste it when it spoils, one or the other. So yeah. Oh, that's another thing. Salt. Where would you get salt from in the Americas? In the Caribbean?
Besides boiling salt water.
Yeah. You don't get salt. I mean, yeah.
Get unpure salt.
Yeah. I mean, where would you get? I mean, because this was one of the reasons why the Europeans actually go here is because in Africa there were salt mines, right? So the major salt mines were in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. There was a huge salt mine in Europe. Does anybody know where it was? No. They had to go out of Spain to get it.
Germany?
Yes. Where it's actually just outside on the border of Germany,
Yeah.
present day Germany, and which
remember that
is
they-
what's the other German-speaking country?
Is it Poland?
Are you talking about Prussia?
Austria.
Austria.
It's in Austria, and it's a town in Austria
Yeah.
that had the salt mines for Europe.
Yeah.
Did you know that in the salt mines in Africa, the British imported Indian slaves?
Mm-hmm.
Peru also has salt mines too.
Yes, but
Here, it's Salzburg.
Salzburg.
Yeah, they put the Nazis put.
that's why it's named.
That's why it's
Yes,
called
that's where they put all the paintings and stuff. They hid all the Raiders of the Lost Ark. They went to Salzburg.
Is that where they get Salisbury steaks?
That's Salisbury, England.
Oh, okay.
Salz is the German word for salt, so it's salt
Bird
town.
of the Sauls.
Yeah, exactly. So there's all these caves there. So for Europe, if they didn't go get it from here, they got it from here. And then they realized that they didn't, if you're in the Caribbean, why would you want to go all the way over here, all the way up there to get your salt? So they started processing it over here. Peru is one place. So the Spanish have huge, there's like deserts of salt in Peru and Bolivia. But if you're in the Caribbean, that's a long way to bring your salt also. So where was the salt from? And what places processed it? You have to process it.
Was it the Greater Antilles or no?
There's one salt flat in Hispaniola on this portion here in Hispaniola, Monte Cristi.
There's one in Cuba.
It wasn't a big one. The main in the Caribbean, the Spanish mainly got it from Hispaniola.
Okay.
But there's one other place, one other country that actually had the salt monopoly in the Caribbean.
Cuba.
Nope.
No,
It's not the
it's either
Spanish.
Dutch, English.
Dutch, English, French, the
French.
Swedish. Don't forget the Swedish for that.
Is it the Swedish?
No.
What was that country that the Spanish just left?
Oh, was that?
Jamaica.
Yeah.
But that's not it either. There isn't much
Is
there.
it down south? Is it Trinidad and Tobago? Or no?
Aruba.
Oh, it's the
Curacao.
ABC.
Curacao.
Curacao. Curacao served two purposes for the Dutch. One, it was primo for salt. So Curacao and this island were where they got the salt from. What's this one?
Bonaire.
Bonaire, that's all it was salt. So any slaves that were in Bonaire, that's what they were processing. The other place was in Curacao, where they had huge salt flats there, but there were other things that they also did. The other thing that they did in Curacao was something called seasoning.
Oh, those were slaves.
What was it? It's like
What does it sound like it is?
Prepping
after.
yeah, that's, I remember that. That was brutal. They were
Yeah.
prepping them for the climate as well as like the physical.
One thing that the Dutch learned was that bringing the slaves in and putting them immediately to work was not cost efficient. The cost basis ratio, or whatever that business word is, didn't work. Because you were losing too many of them because they would get sick and die, or they couldn't keep up with the work and they died. Basically, they died. So that was, you were bringing them in and you couldn't sell them, you're losing money. So what they would do was Curacao became the seasoning island. So they would bring them in from West Africa and they'd drop them off on plantations in Curacao and teach them how to be a slave. This is what you do, this is what your workload's gonna be like, this is the language you're gonna be speaking, all of those things they would teach, and they'd set them right to work, but in a gradual process, right? So they'd make them into a slave. Because remember, we're talking about people who had been free, who had no concept of this, all different walks of life, you know, doing all different kinds of things, and you want them to grow indigo, or grow cassava, or grow tobacco. I'm gonna do that. I was a school teacher. How am I supposed to know that? Or, I grew yams, or, whatever. So now they're bringing them here, and now they're going to say, this is what you're going to do. And so they got a higher price for their slaves because they were ready for market. If you brought them directly from Africa, you could ask only a certain amount because that person then has to break them in. If you bought them from Curacao, from the Dutch seasoning plantations, then you could offer a much higher price.
So they would still do salt, right there in this.
Yes, that was one of the places that they would season. The salt mines, though, the salt factories on the Dutch islands were used both for seasoning of slaves, but also as punishment. So one of the places, like in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, actually, a couple of the pirates had been to the salt flats. The salt flats were punishment. That was where, because think of a salt flat. It's white, right? You're in the sun. You're not near any water. What does salt do? It dehydrates you, right? So you are covered in salt dust. It also hurts, right?
It dries
your skin out. It itches. It's like eczema kind of thing. It's not a nice thing to see your eyes.
Why wouldn't have shoes on at their feet?
Don't have shoes. Yeah, it's very sharp. So it's not a nice place. This was punishment. So instead of debtor's prison, the British colonies would send you to the salt flats. Instead of hanging you from the yardarm, they'd send you. It's much better punishment to send you. They get something out of you, and that's pretty harsh punishment. So sending you to the salt mines, not a good thing, right? That was one of the worst punishments for a white person, let alone for a slave, right? So that was the Dutch had the corner of the market on that. So, yeah. Anything else? Okay, one thing I wanted to make sure we talked about before the end of class was your project that's due on a week from now, a pirate thing. So, I realized I hadn't, one of you wrote and was like, okay, somebody's supposed to write, I don't know, because I didn't specify. So, it's between, I'm going to say 1,500 and 1,800 words, which is about 6 to 7.5 pages long, okay?
Wait.
Let me write this down.
15, you said?
1,500 words to 1,800 words. And I have it up here, so I put it in here now, so you have, it's in writing.
Oh, yeah.
Pirate Land proposal presentation. Okay, 1,500 to 1,800 words. It's equivalent to 6 to 7.5 words, 7.5 pages, all right? It's much easier because then, you know, it doesn't matter what font you're using or anything like that. It's a word. That's, you know, I've been in school before too. I know. They're like, they say 5 pages. Okay, let's work with the margins. Let's do this. Let's do that. Hey, I've been there. Let's do a word thing, a word count, okay? This does not include your footnotes.
Oh, man.
There's a way to mark that when you do the word count in Word,
Just highlight.
where it will just count the essay.
How
not
many
the sum.
footnotes are you supposed to have? Did you start this?
I can't tell you how many footnotes you're supposed to have, because at least one. But I would hope there's more than that, because a lot of this wasn't information you had before, so. Okay, so there's that. Oh, you want to know where it is in the Word thing? Here, let's this thing. Microsoft.
Oh, how to highlight?
Yeah. I don't know where. Can't find anything on this new thing.
There's
Anyway.
in the Cortana.
Where?
It's words. It's listed on the words.
Yeah, rather right. Rather have to sign.
Oh. Okay. So you have a document. It would be, so you do, okay, and you want to put a thing in. You go to
Insert.
references. References. Then you insert footnote. See? What do you want to check? See this little thing here? Check and make sure your footnotes are at the bottom. If you're doing footnotes, that it goes at the bottom of the page. And that the number format, see this number format? None of these. Okay? Make sure it is in the number format. And you start at 1 and you make it continuous. Okay? So we've got that, and then you do your little thingy thing, and then, oops, and then you're done with that. Okay? Then you do another one, and you insert your footnote.
So it'll put your footnote wherever you leave the cursor, right?
Yes. And then remember your punctuation goes before the footnote. Punctuation in there. Okay. So you've got that. If you decide that you want to do endnotes instead, all you do is you go here, put that, end of document, convert. Ta-da, but see what happens? So that means that I need to go in here and I need to make sure that my endnotes have the proper number format. Okay? Yes?
Do you need both footnotes and endnotes?
No, one or the other, but you can do either one, and that shows you how you convert it. You can convert. If you decide at the end that it just looks prettier, it's just a
So like
aesthetic.
an endnote's like that stuff at the very end of all your work.
Right. So you flip through, and so that these numbers would be there, but at the very end of it, then there's a line, and this starts here. Okay? Footnotes is at the bottom, wherever the things are, it's at the bottom of that page. Okay? You still need a bibliography because that's giving you different information. So you'd have this, and then you'd have another, at the bottom, after all of your footnotes, and you'd say bibliography, and you'd have that. Okay? All right. Any other questions while I've got this up here? I'm hearing a lot of conversations, so I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. You got that?
So for citations, the movie, lectures, the books, obviously, and all of that's good?
And yes, all of that is good.
Chicago style?
Chicago style. Where's my thing? In the modules, I even have the thingy for you. This was in week 5. Yes. Under week 5, all the citation information is under your pirate stuff. Examples even, citations coming from, yours truly. Also, another thing I put in is under week 6, which is writing aids. Okay, and these are more style things. So a checklist for like all the things to look for. Things to look for. What does your introduction look like? What do your paragraphs look like? Quoting and citation. Just kind of go through and make sure your paper has all these things, right? Okay?
Wait, we have to number our paragraph?
No.
It just said paragraphs are numbered. Never mind. Doesn't matter. Say so, Joe Pub.
There's no numbering of paragraphs. Number your footnotes.
Maybe I'm tripping.
Each page.
Oh, page.
Your page. Page is numbered. Okay. Then on Wednesday we'll go over how to do an oral presentation because you're presenting, right? Your presentation, 5 minutes. We can't between 4 and 5 minutes. Okay, you got a minute leeway in there. No less than 4 minutes, no more than 5, because we've got how many people in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14, 15 of you, and 5 minutes each will put us at like 75 minutes, and we have 80 minutes or 85 minutes in this class. So you can't go over your 5 minutes. I also don't want you just standing up there for 2 minutes talking. Okay? You need to make a decent presentation of between 4 and 5 minutes. Yes, I'll have my little picker thingy, so you'll know the time. I'll have numbers, time, so I'll tell you when you're at 1 minute. So 1 minute is 4 minutes, right? So when you're at 4 minutes, I'll put up a 1 minute thing, and then I'll put up a 30-second, and then I'll put up just to help you.
Wow.
Okay?
More than usual.
Never had.
Yeah, I was about to say, I've never had that before.
That's usually teachers. Yeah, usually they're not easy for them.
Well, no, if I want you to do a good presentation, I think I should help you.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I like the idea. No, we're not complaining.
No.
Okay, but we'll go over
You should know,
the
you're telling me this.
presentation on Thursday. This is another thing I put in there for you, also on how to write, because some of you haven't written a college history paper before, so this also is kind of all the little, it's more of a, like, the things that I always have to write into the essays, like if you do this and you didn't do that, and so it's just kind of from years of grading college papers, all the things that you might want to look out for, and questions you might have. One thing that might actually really help you guys in this class is how terminology of people, because people don't often like go over how to say things like that. So I kind of put it in there, So we've got different kinds of people coming into the Americas. So if you want to say Euro-Caribbean or Asian Caribbean or something like that, this is the way to do it. There is a proper way to do it, okay? So we've got that, the apostrophes and the decades and all that kind of stuff, really important stuff. So just kind of peruse this before you turn in your paper. Little ass. Okay, so there's lots of help in here for that, and yeah, so I'll get that Moya Poems meeting up for you, and other than that, just keep writing. If you have questions that you want to send me about with paper that you've already written, or drawing, or whatever, send it my way.
Are you gonna be in your office tomorrow morning, so I could like take a peek at like someone's drawings, so I can get like
Yeah,
drawings on like
yeah.
kind of what
You
it
can always
says?
go by, there's one outside, so I don't even have to be there.
I'm going in.
But yeah, I'll be in my office before class tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to get like a glimpse and just start. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Have a good rest of the day.
Welcome, you too.
Total that I was going.
Good job.